to thank you for joining us today for today's panel discussion on data insights. We're privileged to have some great panelists from the data field with us today. Andrew's going to be introducing Carole Hill and Leslie Echelberger. We'll have time for a Q&A at the end of the event, so definitely make sure to stick around for the full thing. Otherwise, we'll be sharing their LinkedIn, so ways to reach out to them if you miss anything. And again, we'll also have this recorded, so you can watch the playback or share with any of your colleagues who might be interested in this topic. Before we begin, I just wanted to share some information about the online community that you've joined. The Bridge, that's how you guys all access this event. So the Bridge is the Doyle Group's community that we've created for technology professionals to connect with one another, access educational resources like articles, job searching, and then to participate in events like this one. So we hope you enjoy being part of this community. We really would like to see some community engagement from members, so please feel free to explore the different groups on the left-hand side of the menu from your home screen. There are different resources in each of those tabs and different members of each of those groups. So feel free to pop around in there. And actually, we have a welcome session next week. So for any new members who are interested in learning how to navigate through the community or just learn how to get the most out of it, that'll be on Wednesday, April 17th at 12 p.m. I'll be hosting it in the Bridge. And you can join it just like you joined this event by clicking RSVP in there and then clicking the Zoom link. Again, it'll just be a quick intro session. We welcome any questions that you have, and it's open to any and all members of the community. So now I actually want to turn it over to our moderator. That's going to be Andrew Doyle, the founder of the Doyle Group, and he's going to be leading the rest of the discussion.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Ashley, and thanks everybody for joining today. I'm super excited to have both Leslie and Carole, who actually I've known for quite a number of years, and they are experts in their field, and so they're going to provide a lot of great discussion, and I'm sure you guys will have some great Q&A for them as well. If you want to move to the next slide, I can give you guys a little bit of background. In terms of the Doyle Group, for those of you who are not familiar with our firm, I was founded in 2009. We're an IT consulting and placement firm, really focused on trying to help our clients build high-performing teams. That can be done either at the individual level or even small teams. One thing that we just realized is that in our business, we've really got two customers that we work with, those being the candidates as well as the clients that are looking to attract their top talent. And one thing that I think we do a really good job of is understanding what that ing is. And what we've defined that as is that human element that really brings a person or a place or an organization to life. And that's whether you're hiring, you're consulting. It's something that I think we just do a really good job of understanding the unique cultural fits of both what the candidate's looking for as well as what our clients are looking for. If you want to go to the next slide, Ashley. In terms of we do this in the capacity of either contract to hire, consulting projects, mainly through like assessments. We've done some CIO retained searches here in town, and super excited about our new partnerships that we've developed for nearshore, obviously more on the South America region, and offshore we've identified a Vietnam firm that we're partnering with that is even a little bit at lower cost than the nearshore. In terms of the areas of focus, it's really kind of through the software development life cycle, as you can kind of see here. Two areas that we've really kind of focused in on or had a lot of success with is kind of in that program and project management space. And so anybody who participated last year, we held a couple of project management, program management webinars. I think some of you guys might have attended last year. And then this year, we said, let's focus in on data. It's another area of focus. We've got a lot of great connections, as well as AI. So this is our first data discussion. We'll have another one coming, and then maybe and so definitely AI in kind of Q3, Q4 timeframe. But really, at the end of the day, was the idea of like, how do we bring all these amazing people that we get to work with each and every day over the past 15 years together? And it's really the idea in this concept of the bridge. And so super excited to bring all of you guys here today. And as Ashley mentioned, what the bridge is capable of. And again, for that session next week, please reach out to learn more about it. But for the main event, we've got Carole Hill and Leslie that are joining us today. Again, I've known Carole for, I was looking at Carole, it's about 10 years. But the last 3 organizations she's worked with, maybe even a fourth if you consider the acquisition that she was a part of. And then Leslie, known for, gosh, over 15 years, even before I started the Doyle Group, I believe. And she was one of our first data warehouse architects that we had placed at a very large healthcare organization. But to give you some more background, Carole has a background in finance, information technology, and data management. She leads enterprise data strategy, focusing on technology modernization and business-led data governance. She is passionate about enabling competitive advantage utilizing data and insight, highlighting data as a valued enterprise asset, and delivering data solutions built for adaptation and multi-use. With over 25 years of data-centric experience, including Vice President of Information Technology, she has led teams responsible for providing trusted and accessible data as a service, thus driving data-driven decisions and innovative capabilities. So welcome, Carole. For Leslie, Leslie is a seasoned data architect with over 30 years in data management, where she has successfully managed strategic enterprise-wide initiatives such as data governance, master data management, data warehouse, and business intelligence programs for in telecommunications, healthcare, oil and gas, mining, manufacturing, the Bureau of Land Management, and DoD. So as you can see, we've got two panelists here with a wealth of knowledge, and we're excited to kind of jump into our question set. Don't do that on the next screen. So just to give you guys some background as well, is these questions were kind of curated through our online community. Ashley put it on LinkedIn. We came up with 4 questions that seem to be kind of the most interesting to folks out there. So we will serve it up with the first one. This one is for Carole. How can organizations prioritize data considerations early in a project? We were kind of talking about this before we jumped on the call. Sometimes it's later. What are the risks of overlooking data at the start, and what advantages does early data identification offer?
Yeah, we were talking about it before, and I think it's getting better over time, but certainly data gets overlooked in the beginning. I do see IT and business working better together. You can't run both of those parallel to one another. At some point they intersect. The data sits in between those. So IT has data, business governs the data. You know, at the end of projects, there's a data need, and we need to bring that together. And so we create projects for different reasons, right? To solve problems or to satisfy a need. Maybe it's compliance and regulation. Maybe we want to improve a KPI, whatever that is. At the end of the day, that project has to be measured. So whether there's a data aspect along completing the project, we do know at the end that we've got to figure out what our benchmark is and whether our project was successful. And so ensuring that you're talking about those KPIs and those metrics up front gives the data team, which could sit in IT or business, depending if it's a governance need or a technology need, an opportunity to help enable your project. And you know, some ways I've seen that is putting a questionnaire together with your project charter. So we do financial analysis, we do the business case, but add a data sheet to that just to ask, what are we going to measure at the end of this? But also, do you need an integration? Do we need data security? Do we need to start thinking about single source of truth? Because at the end of the day, you're going to need it, and it's either going to be a fire drill. So that's a bit of that risk. You know, we overlook it in the beginning. We've lost the time to work together to get to the right answer, or possibly enable the project so it happens faster. And with that simple questionnaire, something else we were talking about is we live and breathe the data. So it's easy for us to think about it. It's not something everyone cares to think about every day. And so the questionnaire can just, you know, enlighten a little bit and get people's minds going of, oh yeah, I am going to need an integration. Oh yeah, this needs row level security or role-based security as part of this project. And, you know, just bring up those insights early. The other thing I would suggest is if you do have an architectural review board or some group that evaluates your projects, a lot of times you see a process, an IT or a business person, sometimes you're more of your infrastructure security involved. Find that data person. The data person should be at the table as well, taking a look at that questionnaire and making sure that the strategy that you're on from an overall enterprise perspective fits in with that project. And again, a lot of times there's enablement. There's value there in bringing them. I know sometimes it's like, oh gosh, we got to talk to another person on a team and we're going to delay this planning. But honestly, you're going to end up delaying it at the end if you don't take that step back and incorporate and make sure we're all working together from the beginning. So questionnaires are helpful. If you have architectural review boards, find the data person, enterprise data architect, data governance lead, somebody to be present to understand, you know, what's aligning with your business, the rest of your business strategy.
Awesome. Thanks, Carol. Leslie, you want to take it?
Sure. Well, and playing to some of the items that Carol touched on is that within organizations, as you're standing up these projects, folks are usually looking at a project to address a specific business need, and they're not looking at it at an enterprise level. So the PMO for your organizations have to have those checks and balances in place as part of the project intake process. Most organizations have some type of an architecture, enterprise architecture team. So your network architects, your solution architects, and your data architects, and they all need to be present at those kickoff meetings for all of these projects, and let them determine if there's a data component in there, and just like it, sign off it passed the data gate, it passed the solution architect gate, and just have that gating process and checklist in place at the start of the program. I come at things a little bit differently just because I'm coming in usually as a consultant, and so sometimes I have to insert myself into those programs because they just don't have the visibility to the impact of the data component of their projects.
And Carol, you had mentioned that it sounds like it's getting better. But I guess one thing that maybe to let people know too, it seems like it's still not as common as you would hope. I think people go through and there's a lot of lessons learned, but I don't know, anything else you want to comment on that?
No, I agree with Leslie. Sometimes it's insertion, raising your hand saying, can I be invited? I heard there's a meeting. Can I be invited to it? But it is lessons learned, right? You reflect on prior projects you've had for the year and you're like, what could we have done better? And part of that's knowing what some upfront planning, it could be as simple as making sure those resources are available that need to do your data piece. But having that planning up front it just ends up helping at the end. And again, I think in some cases enables and moves the project faster along than one might think.
Do you guys feel that the business is getting better about understanding the importance of bringing in your background on the front end?
Where I sit today and where I was previously, absolutely. There's, I do think there's still some early adoption of this, which is where maybe just a simple questionnaire, and you're not asking people to solution, but you're making them think a little bit. No. Just so someone who does wear that hat in the organization, whether they have the right data architect title or the data governance title, can get involved and dive a little deeper.
Cool. Next question, Leslie. This one is for, next question for Ashley, if you can put it up. This one is for Leslie. Again, we were just kind of talking about it, right? How do you gain that executive buy-in or find that executive sponsor from leadership to invest in data solutions and data governance initiatives? I'll let you take it, Leslie.
Yeah. So typically when you're trying to sell a data governance and an MDM solution to the executives, they're not going to understand anything if you're talking theory. And this is why this is good for you. You have to come into those discussions with numbers and actual business cases where something's failing, and as a result, this is what's happening. So I'll just throw out an example. As a clinic administrator, I'm unable to manage my staffing correctly because of some business issue that's happening. So there's a revenue, there's a number attached to that scenario, and that's what the executives are interested in. They're not interested in what it gets them. They're going to react by what's being impacted right now, whether it's unable to get product out the door, or it's unable to deliver something, or we're losing revenue because of, and come to the table with those numbers, percentages, and at the executive level, that's what's going to cause them to react. Those real life scenarios. This is what's happening in your business today as a result of not having this.
Love it. Carol?
Yeah, I mean, Leslie's taken the words out of my mouth. There's the high level, which you got to land on. They got to understand how tech fits in your architecture, but I guarantee they've seen that in a conference or on Gartner, or, yay, you want an MDM tool, that's exciting, but it is getting those real use cases and taking a business strategy that you're trying to solve for the organization and explain why the data associated with that might not be in the best format or ready to go. A real use example that we did a year and a half ago and something we're trying to improve is our customer 360 views. And so I actually sat down with leaders and asked them to define a customer. And of the 15 leaders, you can imagine, I got 15 different answers. Some similar, but with extra granularity, like a customer who hasn't bought from me for 3 years isn't considered an active customer. And so, if you don't know the literacy around your data and you don't know what you're measuring and what the output is, it's really hard. And then from there, we can go through and say, all right, we could do select count of our customers. We get 100, but based on your definition, we really only have 80. And oh, by the way, I take a look at a little bit deeper and find out we have them set up multiple times. We share them across business lines, really getting into that to show the true value, to Leslie's point, on how do we get to that answer. And as we tie into AI, because AI is hot, imagine asking AI how many customers we have without a definition, without telling it what the rules are around it. You're going to get your select count, and that's what it's going to tell you your customer list is. So, real use examples, tying it to those business strategies, tying it to, AI at this point, because it's a hot topic, is extremely important. And that's what's going to sell it, not what the tool does itself.
Love it. Any other thoughts on Carole's suggestion, Leslie?
No, I think we have like the same.
Love it. Love it. All right, next question, Ashley. So obviously security is on top of mind for all businesses, but what are the best practices for ensuring the security and quality of data? Do you follow a specific methodology for each data project you lead, or is it one of those things where each one you come across, you got to adapt and be nimble? And again, I'll let you take it, Carole.
Sure. Gosh, I feel like this ties into your other two. Be involved in projects early to understand the security ask, and then make sure you have technology and capabilities around it. So I just want to highlight that. But yeah, ChatGPT is a real thing. Screenshots of data, downloading to, sending it to personal emails, honestly, people is probably your biggest risk when it comes to security, and putting data ethics and policies together and holding folks accountable is important. They need to be aware of what they're allowed to do with the data and what they shouldn't do with the data. And again, hold them accountable. Also training. I try to take training to a personal level. It's one thing to say, in the office, don't pick up the USB in the parking lot and plug it in your computer and we all go, okay. But when you tie it to, grandparents and parents or children and really start to show, how data breaches can occur and then bring that back to the business, that's helpful. If I think about it more from a technology governance perspective, you need folks that know where know what sensitive data is, know where it lives, understand the lineage and the architecture and process flow of that data, tag it, mask it, know when your retention policies are, when to delete it. And that's a big part of what data governance does. But, getting that mapped out across your organization in tools typically is very, very helpful. They help you identify, again, retention and get rid of things, but also being involved in those projects so that you can track it as you go along is what's going to make you successful. But, we do try to do a methodology where I'm at now of, we have things mapped out. We understand privacy policies as far as, how long do we have to retain data? When do we have to delete data? But as new things come in, thinking through, does our methodology and can we lay, to your point, are there special cases? Maybe, but we try to lay it through the same process unless there's a one-off of some sort. So technology, governance, people, a bunch of things to think about.
Love it. Leslie?
Yeah. So this kind of plays into the first question. I agree with Carole on that one, because that data architect is going to be the one, who's looking at that kind of information down to that level of granularity that you need to determine, is this information that needs to be secure? Am I dealing with PII? A lot of it has to do with the industries you're in as well. For healthcare, it's very much about that privacy of the patient. You're dealing with an R&D, then there's a lot of an intellectual patent type of secure data that's probably going to have some governance around it. I actually do, depending upon the industry that I'm in, I do have some of those repeatable processes that are specific to the industry. So as soon as I walk in the door and my client is healthcare, I know I've got some patient data, probably some secure data about providers that's probably floating out there unsecure. And so those are things that I'll try to interject in to make sure that that's being done as part of the, if it's not part of the governance program, I try to get it incorporated as part of the governance program, because those are critical data points that have to be managed at an enterprise level as an enterprise level asset. So I do have some methodologies that I go through, not sure if they're just industry methodologies, but they're Leslie's methodologies that work for her programs. And then just getting that sign off. So once you determine I'm the type of security that the data that you're dealing with that requires security, what kind of security are we talking about? Do we lock down the whole record or just the secure information about that record? So everybody can see employee related data, but do you get to see my social security? How do I lock that down? You can lock it down all the way down to a specific element level if you want. But those are things that as an organization you discuss and within the governance teams and define, for this element I want to handle security this way, and I want to handle security this way for something else. And truly an industry specific type of methodology that I go through in my process.
Thanks, you guys. Ashley, I saw a question come through. Do you want to announce that question and throw it out to the panelists?
Yeah, that sounds good. So the question is from Carissa. She's asking, what type of checks and balances can we put into place to make sure data is being inputted and being done correctly? Looking at the very base level that we can't manage from the higher levels, how much can AI help you keep this data clean?
A lot to unpack in there. So
Yeah, that was my thought too, because I don't, Carole probably has a much a better answer on the AI perspective, but a lot of it's depending upon where that data is going to get input. Are you inputting it within one of these external transactional systems like an order entry system, or have you already established governance around that data? And the point of entry is actually your MDM, your master data management. So there's a lot of factors that kind of actually change my answer, so to speak. But technically, assuming that it's just from an application perspective, you can build quality rules around the data and how it's entered. And again, that's that data architect that's going to come in, who has that governance component and know how to manage that data. Do we need to build formatting rules, because we don't want just random varchar 4000 text fields everywhere. So some formatting rules and those kinds of checks and balances you can put in during the data entry part.
Yeah. So I guess it depends how sophisticated the organization is and what they have. So we did not start out with sophisticated technologies where I am today, but we had data governance and did the best we could through workflows. So, things like Agile Point, K2, putting cascading filters together so you make sure that your data is getting as quality checked as possible there. Even a lot of times it's reactive, but building reports from either your data lake or your source system to be able to identify business rules and data quality rules to help you go back and identify where data was entered incorrectly. Those with more sophisticated tools, obviously data quality tools, MDM, really help you with that. They offer more of that proactive catch, putting your business rules there up front and ensuring fields are entered in the right format. To Leslie's point, maybe there are more drop downs, cascaded relationships. So that's super important. where AI I see in the new tools already, you start to enter something and it's doing its own checks and balances and seeing common themes. And we see it today when we're typing in Outlook or Excel, it's starting to finish words for us. And, hey, I've noticed you typically put this in and that you've entered something incorrectly or different than I've seen in the past. So probably more so in a sophisticated tool than you're going to see trying to do on your own around some AI practices.
Thanks, you guys. I think there was another question, Ashley.
There is. Christina said, I like to look at data pre-project to help build the business case as well as after implementation. How do you prevent bias in interpreting data so you're looking at the real picture?
That's interesting. I would question where someone sits. So you don't want IT pulling the data, you want the business pulling the data. And I would, a lot of times we do is ask them for their ugliest anomaly. I'm in a food industry, so Kendall Jackson is a client of ours, and there's a mess around Kendall Jackson. There's so many farms that go on. And so we try to find those pockets of, potential areas of detail and bring those forward versus this looks really pretty and it's perfect. And, so we do try to find the messiness when we do it, but it takes the business and a SME who understands that data to get the right information forward.
How many times, Carole, does the business not really understand their data to be able to give you that?
Well, they all think they understand their data, right? They all think they have their best data. And so some of it is, to your point, you guys bring forward, and similar to what do you think a customer is, and you'll start to see differences across the board on who thinks their data is better or more accurate, and you start to see those nuances across.
So as yourself, as a professional, do you help try to there's obviously almost kind of psychology you have to play into that.
Mm-hmm.
LOL, your enthusiasm is palpable.
Are you able to maybe just talk a little bit how you approach that?
Just spot them. Yeah.
And if everybody could just, if you're not speaking, just put it on mute, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I think it's too good to be true. So if everything's, laid out and perfect, or you got to question it, because data can be messy. And unless you've got sophisticated tools already, and even then it can be a bit messy, to your point, because what I think is a location, you might not think is a location, and you end up with, different definitions of that. So, it's just keeping your rate, probing a bit, like, what else, a little bit of coaching to get more of the detail out. And if you've heard different definitions of things, or you're aware that you have different calculations, bringing those forward and say, how does that tie to this or to that? But again, it takes a SME who really understands that business area, which is where your data stewards and your data governance folks are key to have at the beginning of the project, to weigh in on whether what they're seeing is accurate or not.
Cool. Any follow-up to that, Leslie?
No, well, from a governance perspective, to Carole's point, you're building out these governance programs, and you're usually looking at it at a domain level, whether it's a customer domain, a material domain, or patient domain, whatever your industry is. And usually those governance folks are your subject matter experts, business users. IT is in those, and you have enterprise-wide stakeholders sitting in those work groups. But to Carole's point, you talk to one business and it's like, oh, this is the best, this is a customer. And then you talk to another one, this is customer. And it's not until you start pulling in the data and actually looking at it with these, governance folks and saying, this is what your data actually says. And then they don't realize that, well, this group is taking that data and they're doing this and this and this to it. And then they have this brand new record that looks like this. And then another group is doing something else to that data. And so you have all of these silos that are occurring to get the data to a level of quality that they need. And you really can't figure out, what's what until you start looking at the data as a group. And then that light bulb moment does come on. It does, when they are like, oh, I didn't know we were doing that. And it's like, yes, you are. And that's part of the governance, process. Because I don't think folks purposefully are doing these things. They have a business need, and they've got to get the data to work within that process. And so that's why you have a lot of these things that are occurring on the side. But the work group, those data governance groups are definitely, to Carole's point, they're the ones that know the data, they know the processes, and so they're the ones that need to decide how to manage the data.
Cool. Love it. We'll take the next question, Ashley. So this obviously is an area that we participate in as well. But as a leader, how do you hire the right data professionals for your teams or projects? And what are some of the key qualities you look for? I think it'll be interesting about this too, is depending on the program you're building, again, you guys are talking about the data stewards and the SMEs and just all those different skill sets that are in there. But I don't know if maybe you want to even talk from kind of start to finish, what you're looking for when you're kind of building out the right data professionals, and what are some of the things that you look for in the individuals you want to bring into that particular team. I'll give this one to Leslie.
Yeah, so I'm again, just from my history, I'm usually coming in as a consultant. Sometimes I'm coming in at those high level, the strategic, when they're just defining out the program, and we get the opportunity to bring in somebody who knows how to manage these types of programs. So PMO folks, the industry's leaning more towards agile methodology. So somebody who's familiar in that space, because nobody's going to wait 3 years for these solutions anymore. And then some of the technical folks as well, once you are starting to actually get into some of the designs and, the architecture and the development. So there's so many different people that are involved with different skill sets needed for governance. And then MDM, if you are standing up that component. But for my own experience is that I have a tendency to lean towards people who are working more or have experience more in a reporting, analytics, warehousing space versus someone who is very specific to a transactional system. And the reason being is that usually in the reporting, analytics, that kind of space, you're the person who has to bring that data together. And you're dealing with the same anomalies that governance and MDM programs deal with, is trying to understand all of these data disparity, and quality issues. And so usually folks that are coming from that space, they're looking at it from the lens of enterprise reporting, predictive analytics. Those are enterprise level initiatives. So they're tackling very similar issues that a true governance and MDM program would. So that's kind of where I have a tendency to lean towards when I start to bring in some of the implementation folks versus our front end PMO folks. But that's, just my experience and what I kind of lean towards.
Thanks for sharing. Carole?
Yeah, sure. So first thing I do is figure out what I'm solving for, because to Leslie's point, there's governance, there's MDM, there's data engineers, there's data modelers. And so, take the title out of it for a second and then list your unicorn. This is everything that I need at the moment. And then go back and find whatever the fancy title is of the hour or the year for that role. But a big thing for me is obviously culture and team fit. I'm not looking for the same type of person. There's 10 different ways to do things in the data space. So it's, having very collaborative, open-minded folks, willing to understand their ideas, not always their specific ideas, not always selected, but they're adding to the solution, because it's always trade-offs. It's understanding where that trade-off is and where we're comfortable having that trade-off. And so someone who's, is going to fit into that culture and be open and willing to change. The other thing is adaptability. I think our tech stack is moving so quickly. AI is coming in, ways of working, the agile that Leslie mentioned, it didn't happen as quickly as it used to. And so you could become an expert on a tool and stay with that tool for 10 years. It's shifting fast. And so a lot of times talking through change, it might be an organization change. It could have been a merger and acquisition. It could be a technology change, but seeing, proof that they are able to adapt, change, and, work toward that new way of doing something or that new tech is extremely important. I like, similar to the reporting, is someone from the business side coming over to IT. So someone who understands the struggles that they've had trying to get to data, trying to do the modeling themselves, relating different disparate systems together, because they get it. They get what they're trying to do at the end of the day from a reporting perspective, and enough of that technical savviness to start bringing it to an enterprise. So, crossing the boundaries of business and IT from a data perspective has been extremely helpful. So again, data stewards coming into tech, or tech going into the data steward side, bridging that gap between the two is extremely valuable to me when I'm looking.
Gotcha. Do you ever run into a scenario where maybe there's a certain skill set that's in a particular position that maybe they're really good at what they do, but they're not in the right fit? I guess for somebody to be able to identify that, what are you looking for? There are certain things that maybe experiences you've had where you've said, if it looks like this, it's probably not a good fit over here. I don't know if that's a good enough question, but
I think that's fair. And maybe some of that comes with almost introvert, extrovert. There are certain technical backgrounds that want to stay more on the technical side and really want to heads down. Here's the 2 projects I work on, and they're extremely valuable. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you need somebody more business facing and out there and doing training and, trying to get that acumen of ways of working out there, you're going to want someone that's a little more, willing to work in a gray space or an extroverted. So certainly that personality, there's a right fit for a right role. And that's important.
Leslie, any other thoughts?
No, just, looking for, like Carole was saying, is somebody who is flexible, because things are changing, things are moving fast. Like I was saying, and you don't have 3 years to deliver anymore. And even during the middle of a project, things are going to change, and it changes quickly. You have to be able to adapt to that. So somebody who's capable of pivoting, and not letting their whole world come crashing down, because guess what? We got to pivot. We got a new source we didn't know about, or, now we're scoping this in, and just being able to roll with that. One of the things that I've noticed in the governance and MDM space, is that once it's established and it becomes well known within the organization, the requests just start rolling in. Like, you cannot handle the amount of, no, we want to start mastering this, or can we do that? And can you start sending that really great data over here? So you're constantly moving to the business demands as they're changing. So somebody who has that flexibility, like Carole said, is absolutely, you got to have it.
I would imagine though too, you want the person who has the flexibility, but you also want the person who has the power and the willingness to say no, right? I mean, that's
true.
You've got
I just came out of a meeting like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
There's another question that came through, Ashley.
There is, and it actually ties into what we're talking about right now. Nick has a question about the process aspect. He said, which professionals do you recommend to hire first? Data stewards, data architect, etc.
So data stewards, data architects. So the data steward is probably already there, because those are technically your business, your subject matter experts. Those are your business folks, or maybe even an IT person. But those are the people who already have the knowledge. So my guess is that you already have them. So depending upon, again, if you're starting, from greenfield, or if this, you have other efforts underway, I would look at bringing somebody in who can come in at a high level and assess the situation and give you some strategic roadmaps. So somebody who can come in just really quickly for a couple weeks, month or two, and just do an assessment. And then from there, fill in the gaps, because you may have, along with your SME, folks already in staff that, you can bring into to fill some of those positions.
I would imagine some
That's-
organizations don't understand who their experts are. So is there a way that you guys as
Mm.
professionals can help even the organizations identify who those people are?
My
So-
tip, go ahead,
Right.
Carol.
I was gonna say, to Leslie's point, they're floating around. Someone is entering your customers, someone's entering your items, someone's aware of what they need to give to vendors and suppliers. And, so it's finding those folks who is setting up your ERP and entering your data and mastering it. Those are your data stewards. And to your point, Andrew, how do you have to give them the job descriptions that go with that. So maybe it's 15, they're already doing it. It's just calling out that you are a data steward and 15% of your job is what you already do, but we're going to bring you into this data governance policy or, process to understand how we can better make your life better.
Love it. Well, we'll open it up right now for additional questions. We've got some other questions if we need to fill some time, and we've got some obviously excellent experts here. But any questions, you guys please put it in the chat, or I guess you can even go off mute and ask your question. But I think we have about 15 minutes left. Leslie does have a very hard stop. I think maybe even a little bit before 1. So anybody have any questions that they have for the panelists?
Hello, I do have one question. This is Nick Gwynn. So if you do have people floating around in the organization and you're going to recruit them into these other duties as assigned, what do you do? What do you recommend in terms of training them to get them up to speed with the practices that are maybe best practice in this space now?
I think to your point, it's identifying them and a lot of times it's not adding work to their plate because they're doing it. It's getting them to understand the value of what they're doing and how it's used downstream and what some policies and data quality governance checks can be put in place, and then how you can help them. So it's identifying those people, and maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10, bringing them in, explaining that what they're doing is, I kind of call them resume builders, but oh, by the way, you can also add data steward to your resume now, because that's what you're doing. And then do a show and tell 101 on data governance, the value of it, the importance of it, how downstream it might flow through a process or end up on a report or even end up in the hands of a customer, so that they can understand the value of customer onboarding is important, but a lot of times you're keying in fields and not realizing that bigger value for marketing teams, operations teams, sales teams. And if anything, they get excited they're providing value for the organization.
Leslie, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Carol could have done this panel by herself, because I'm in the same space. It's just those folks actually are doing this work every single day. And so it's just helping them to build some process around it. And like she said, I mean, there's an impact downstream that they probably have no visibility to. And so, what you're entering in here, and just really building processes around it. I don't think that it's, some, big degree that they have to go after or all this training or anything. It's just providing them with some knowledge that they just aren't aware, and the impact of their day-to-day job, which they're already doing. But those are exactly the kind of people, to Carol's earlier comment, those are exactly the kind of people who you're looking for, are the ones who are doing the day in and day out, creating a record, managing your inventory, or whatever your area is for your industry.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick, help me out here too, but I almost kind of heard you say, so obviously the data stewards are identified, that's great. But then how would you then start building out your data governance team to help support that effort? Like, what are some additional roles that you would look? And again, I know there's a lot of complexities that look like that, but
Yeah.
Maybe just kind of talk a little bit high level, like baseline, I would start here. If it's this complex, I'd go here.
Right. So I usually am starting out with who, for whatever domain is that we're trying to build governance around, who are those subject matter experts? So the people that are my front line, the data entry folks, usually are pulling in the IT team representatives that are managing the system that the data entry is occurring in. So you have some of those folks on these groups and these governance groups. You have some of your PMO is in there, because you don't want to be a one-man shop and think that you can whip through all of this with just an architect or just one person. It really is a collaboration across all of these different key business areas, IT, SMEs, your executive sponsorship, and some of those mid-level leadership roles that are on these governance to help drive some of these decisions that you're making.
And the size of the organization for sure, because you have one ERP, you're going to find those folks and it's entered in one place. Not as hard, right? Bigger global organizations, you have more than one person entering customer information. So there might be a need for more of an enterprise customer data lead who helps the customer data stewards, whether it's, broken up by region or broken up by system, understand their play into an overall master data set. So you obviously start with the folks entering the data and how they're managing their business line or their region, but you might even have someone at a higher level who owns that customer domain or supplier domain that can help understand enterprise-wide how we're going to utilize this data, 360 views of things, or as you plug and play systems going forward, how it all comes together. But certainly the size of your organization is going to depend how deep and wide that you need to make that governance group.
From your guys' experience, and obviously, tools are only tools. It's like what you're trying to solve with those tools.
Yep.
When you guys are hiring, you do select the tool. How important is it that the individual understand that specific tool? Or is it, I'm just, in fact, talking about whether it's ETL tools, right? Or whatever the tool set is, are a lot of those competencies and areas that they very transferable, would you say? Or what are your thoughts there?
I do think it's transferable. I think, understanding methodology, data movement, steps between different stages of your process, how your data is going to be used. So is raw okay? Does it need to be all the way through to a Kimball data model? Those all transfer regardless of the tool. So whether I go to file open or I hit a icon or whatever that is, it takes time. You got to learn new tools. If you handed me an Android right now, I'd fall on my face, but I'm well aware how a phone should work, right? And so it just takes time to figure out how to get into that. There are some niches, maybe within an MDM, there's, JSON code. And again, it just depends on how fast you have to run, because there's a lot of folks, and that's another reason I look for the adaptability and areas that they've challenged themselves is, can you pick up a new, software language or a new tool? But it just depends, did you need someone yesterday, or does this due in a year and you have time to really grow someone? But I do think it's transferable as long as the concepts and the methodology is understood.
Well, I think you hit it on the head from our client side, right? It's we need someone to come and hit the ground running. They better have the tool.
Yeah.
Someone you're going to hire full time and they can grow into the role. And like you said, technologies are going to change. That adaptability is a key part of that. Satish had a question, and his question is, what are your thoughts about greenfield projects that start with data scientist hires? I don't know if you need some more context around that question, but Carole or Leslie.
Yeah, so and really just more to understand the question itself, and the business case that you're targeting is that data scientists are coming in to do some data mining and then trying to kickstart a project off of that kind of the results from the mining. Is that what the question is?
Yes, that's correct, Leslie.
Okay. And that really is a tough one, because it's coming at it from a different perspective, because usually with the governance, those projects, if you can get those running through like a normal intake process, whatever that business, the problem is that you're going in and you're mining the data for. It's almost looking for little nuggets. I think it's harder to sell those little nuggets because they're not seeing the bigger, they're not able to see the bigger picture and understand what the mining effort was for. I don't know, Carole, if you've had experience with coming at it from that end, but usually it's more of those senior level, executive level, some of those SMEs where they know there's a problem with my data and they haven't gone in and mined it, but they, we're losing revenue, we're losing patients, and some of those other business issues that are popping up versus mining for something specific and then trying to sell that into a governance project.
Yeah. I would say 9 times out of 10, maybe more than that, there's a business strategy driving the mining. It's, maybe we want to understand relationships among products that we don't know if that exists. We're hoping it does because it can offer some, more shared wallet. But, if we're just hiring data scientists to poke around and find trends, I don't see that as often as I see a particular use case for them to dive after. Certainly, if it is something like that and we see value in it, we go through the normal project intake and it goes through that process as if it were a project predefined.
Thanks, you guys. Any other questions out there? We got about 5 minutes left. Any other questions that you guys have? So I've got one that we were kind of talking about prior to the event today, but I think what's always great is just to kind of hear about those real world experiences. And so I think when you actually kind of talk through a successful, data governance project, if you get, and again, we only have 5 minutes, right? But just high level, maybe we'll let Leslie go first. I think Carole's got a little bit more time, but I guess, what was the messiness at the front? Where would you guys come into? How long did it take? What did it look like at the end? What was the value to the customer? Can you provide some examples of successful delivery?
Well, that's I have to think back to some of these programs that I've been on in the past, with so major healthcare. There just was a lot of the biggest problem was with a lot of the duplication of data. Multiple points of entry of the systems. And Andrew, I'm not sure if I'm answering the question directly, but they're being able to come in, stand up a governance program and the corresponding MDM component. So, and for clarity, when folks are looking at data governance, you can have data governance and build processes and rules around your data. And you don't have to have an MDM solution, but if you have an MDM solution, you have to have governance. So it's kind of like how your business and what your particular needs are. Most of the folks that I have worked with in the past, the organizations I've worked with in the past, are wanting both. They want the governance, the processes defined, all of those things, and then they want the tool, because that provides you the automation to establish some of these things that you're trying to build governance around. So major healthcare and having to actually go in and get the buy-in from the executives and showing them those numbers of lost revenue and just not being able to allocate. They had a high attrition on some of their clinical staff and just the burnout. And so going in, building that governance and MDM program for them, it ended up turning into a multi-year effort, because what started out as one domain that we were supposed to build governance and master data around turned out to be 13. And so it really does. It sells itself. If it's successful, it sells itself. And then the next thing you know is it's growing.
Awesome.
So I don't know, Andrew, if that answered your question or if I just.
No, I think that was a good high level. Again, I know if you need to jump, Leslie, feel free to, but
Okay,
Carole,
Yep.
you take that next one.
Yeah, it's funny. I think Leslie and I think too much alike. So you're going to hear
I know, right?
you're going to hear a very similar answer. But we've all seen the shiny tech, and how many times, I mean, the software vendors love this. We think their tech's going to solve our data and our process problems, and all we did was move it to something more exciting, and if anything, expose even worse things because the technology does that. So, you know, what I've seen successful where I'm at is having a governance team set up ahead, you know, identifying the pain points, identifying ways of working and process improvements, so that when you onboard a tech, it's a sell at that point. You have data, you have fact-based information to then onboard a technology. You already know what you need to improve, what your quality rules are, who your users are, who your people are, what you're impacting, because you've done some lineage there around it, to get that tech sponsorship and get it in there, and then build it out from there, start to build that foundation. And I think that works well versus tech first, you know, build it later. You don't have the right people in, you're not thinking about necessarily how it's going to plug in. I mean, MDM can work many different ways. You know, we start with analytical, typically get it all together and then flip it to an operational, because starting from operational when you don't have something, a team or anybody even built into, is extremely hard. So, you know, I'd focus on process, people, you know, the data itself first, and then find that right technology that can grow within your entire enterprise architecture. Because similar to every other project that comes in, you got to bring the tech stack into the project intake as well, to make sure that the architecture and the security and such fits into your overall long-term strategy.
One last question along that, Carole, too, but in terms of like where the start of where maybe an organization's at and to the end, what were the results? What was the business value that you were able to provide?
The start of not having the tech, is that what you mean?
Yeah, or just maybe there's not a you know, there's obviously a reason why they're going down this strategy.
Oh yeah. Lots of different reasons. Gosh, where can I go? You know, wanting to be more near real time, making decisions, you know, on the fly, wanting systems to be more seamlessly integrated, automated processes, starting to share data externally. Obviously, black eyes within a company is tolerable. Black eyes when you start getting to your customers is not. And so, you know, that's a huge sell for it as well. But yeah, you don't have a data strategy without a business strategy, and I don't know how you have a business strategy without thinking about your data. So those two need to be walking together, and you need to at least know what 3 years looks like. You know, five's nice, can change, but you got to understand why you're putting things in and what your value is and what you're tying to, because just mastering your customer data without, you know, understanding the value and where you're headed it's valuable, but it's not super valuable.
Gotcha. Cool. We're at time. I don't know, Carole, if you had a couple extra minutes. If anybody else free to ask away. I think Ashley, did you want to just maybe comment on where this video can be shared going forward?
Yeah, for anyone who couldn't attend or any colleagues you think might be interested in this content, we are going to be posting the recording on our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is on the slide there for you to visit. We should have it up within the next 24 hours, and then we'll also share it on our LinkedIn page. We share a lot of great content on LinkedIn, events like this, articles that we write, studies. So definitely, if you're not following us yet, there's our link right there. Give us a follow.
Yeah, and I would say too, back to the bridge as well. I mean, again, it's something that we've built, and we know that communities only develop as communities kind of participate. So if you guys say, gosh, this is a really cool tool, it'd be cool if we could have more of this or less of that or whatever it is. I mean, it's an ongoing platform that we would love valuable feedback on. And also too, anybody who's here and you guys are connected on the bridge, feel free if there's additional questions. I'm sure Carole was perfectly fine to answer follow-ups if you guys didn't have a chance to ask them today, and vice versa, right? We kind of talked about the community as program and project managers, data, architects, analysts, MDM experts, but just in terms of the whole realm of technology, that's kind of really what we've built the community for. And then we could even build sub-communities within it. So more to come on that front, but any last questions for Carole before we wrap up? No? Well, we really appreciate your guys' time today. Carole, again, as always, thank you for your valuable insights. And
Thanks.
I think this was a great topic discussion. And yeah, look forward on the YouTube channel if you guys want to revisit it or share it with others. But have a great afternoon, and thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.